So hello everyone, my name's Bridget. I'm the Assistant Director of International Enrollment at Niagara University. My role is to advise all international students through our admissions process and review their applications. So like Kate mentioned, we're all involved in digital marketing whether we like it or not, and we all know our favorite method is emails. And emails carry a lot of power, and one of those powers is informing students of how much your university values them. And one of those things that plays a role in that is honesty. So keep in mind those decision makers for your students. Put yourself in their seats. If they're asking about what your tuition costs are, tell them point blank. Here's our estimated costs. Here's the highest scholarship we can offer you. Because if a student's budget is $30,000 US and our estimated tuition is maybe $80,000 US and the highest scholarship we have is $20,000, your university may not be the best fit for them. So it's best to be as upfront as possible from the start. Of course, response time. Your students are going to feel very valued the sooner you get back to them. I'm still working on that, definitely. And then, of course, the details we include in our responses, too. I will get a couple of those very elaborate 15-question emails. And sometimes I like to respond in order to be conscious of my time and say, hey, let's just sit down, schedule a Zoom meeting. I'm so excited you want to sit down and learn more about my university. So let's have a discussion that way. And then, of course, individualized support. So with individualized support, it's also important for you to understand what you're capable of. I'm a one-man show at my university. So it's important for you to understand what your common inquiries are. And I do want to be the superhero for all of my students. I really wish I could be. But some days I just have to play Superman's receptionist and just send them a bunch of basic information so I can answer their inquiries, decrease that response time, and things like that too. If you are involved in creating the Harvest campaign emails for your university, you have a say in those things. Take note of those common inquiries that you receive at different parts of the school year, and then find ways to include those in your Harvest campaign emails, so that way those questions are answered before they get to you as well. In order for me to expedite response time too, I have created common response templates. I'm always responding to emails about what scholarships you offer, what's your application process. And I want to be able to provide the students with as much information as possible with calls to action involved in that. So I have created common response templates, usually involving estimated costs, scholarships, our application process. So that way I at least send them the information, get the information that they're initially requesting, so then if they have follow-up questions that are unique to their situation, I can reconnect with them and then provide them with that much greater individualized support later on. And as I mentioned, I am a one-man show, so when I'm out of office, my out-of-office email can't just be an alert. It also has to serve as a tool to my students, too. So I've created a sample template for you guys that you can feel free to use after this presentation as well. So how many of us are involved in building a Harvest campaign for the university? A couple. If we don't speak the marketing language, Harvest campaign is basically the emails that are automatically sent to your inquiries, your prospects, and your applicants. These are sometimes done in-house for your university, and sometimes universities hire outside assistance with these as well. And these were kind of the basic reflection questions that I used to help build my Harvest campaign for my international students. Again, what are your common inquiries? What do my students and parents want to know? Cost, scholarships, accreditations, what's the student experience, what's the application process? It's also important to reflect on what the onlys of your university that you have. What does my university have that no other university has to offer? These are the decision factors for many, many students. So it's important to introduce those to your prospects as early as you can. And then within all of your Harvest campaign emails, it's important to include calls to action. You should have one of two calls to action within your Harvest campaign emails, because it's my pet peeve when I get up our marketing email and it's just a shout into the void saying, please respond, I want to hear from you. Give them a reason to want to engage with you. So you can have two types of those calls to action. A tool for the basic college search is great to include, but also tools involved directly with your university is also great to include as well. So these simple basic tools could be college search workbooks, links to register for virtual fairs, maybe a fun video created by some of your international students of the do's and don'ts in the university search process. And then some of the university-specific tools we provided for our incoming international students is maybe scheduling a one-on-one Zoom meeting with me, downloading a brochure, specific website links to get more details on the response that we have provided them, website links, like I said, links to virtual tours, those kinds of things as well. And then here's my pride and joy that I've been trying to master. So when I'm outside of the office, I feel like I really need to give my students as many tools as possible so that they have things to do while they wait for me to get back. So my out-of-office email basically reads, hello, thank you for your email. I'm currently out of office without access to email. I will return on set date. If I'm out for an extended amount of time, I usually like to extend this day, maybe a day or two, so that way my students, sometimes I feel like they mark their calendar and like, okay, you're back in office. Can I hear from you? So sometimes I like to extend this day, maybe a day or two, so that way it gives me a little bit of additional time to get back to all of my inquiries. This second part of my email includes a link to my virtual meeting calendar. This can be a preference factor for some universities. I like to include it just because it gives the students the opportunity to sit down and have that virtual chat with me. Students aren't always able to make their virtual meeting, but if they're not able to make it, that's just more time set aside for me to catch up on those emails that I had missed when I was away. And then if I'm away for a massively extended time, I usually like to include links to our common inquiries listed here as well. So that might be our basic international admissions website that goes over our application process, an FAQ page, estimated costs, scholarships there as well. And then it's important to also include an immediate assistance option for your students as well. So this might be a cross-trained professional in your office or the basic admissions deadline and things like that as well. And then find a fun way to conclude it. So I always like to say I look forward to connecting with you soon as well. So it's important for all of us to find ways for us to be accessible when we are not. And then I'll pass things over to Brendan. Thank you.
Podium and everything. So there we go. Okay. So my name is Brendan Bond. Thanks for joining us today. I'm one of the associate directors in the Office of Admissions at the University of Rochester, and I work specifically inside of international recruitment. In thinking about how I was going to approach our conversation today, I very much realized that I am not an expert when it comes to the digification of, you gotta love language when it comes to digital things, the digification of higher education and the higher education landscape and how we reach out to students. But in thinking a little bit more about my role inside of international education, international recruitment, and admissions in general, like we illustrated at the top of our presentation, in reality, we all use digital marketing on a daily basis. And what I'm going to be talking a little bit more about specifically is how it relates to the use of video and the way in which we present ourselves as universities to our constituents. But first, some interesting ideas that, oh, this is not the right slide. There we go, okay. I'm not an expert, like I said, even though I'm a millennial, and I did have a Facebook profile in like 2005 when Facebook was just for universities. You know, technology moves fast, but you know what doesn't move fast is messaging, so we can all get behind that. So these are some really interesting ideas that I thought about, or that I came across when it comes to higher education and the way in which the digital world is encroaching upon, or are we encroaching upon the digital world when it comes to higher education? And a lot of what folks and experts in the field have to say is actually, in a lot of ways, higher education is very much a lagger in terms of an industry when it comes to the digification of our industry. And I think a lot of us would be surprised by that fact, considering the last 2 years, we've all been a part of the Zoomification of higher education. And suffice to say that there's a lot more room in actuality of where the digital landscape can cause disruption into the way in which we function in recruitment, admissions counseling, both in the high school and university side. And so that's a little scary, but I think it's okay because, you know, when it comes to international recruitment, and I can't speak to a student who is around the world, but I can sit down with them, so to speak, through Zoom, that's okay. All right, that's a way in which we are still connecting with the world and our constituents, right? And I think there's been a lot of backlash relative to the way in which the digital world is encroaching into the classroom. But the classroom, right? The classroom's been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So I think there is room in terms of the way in which we approach the way in which we approach the work that we do. And so I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't be afraid of the digital world. I think it's something really important to keep in mind, and we're all fatigued by the way in which Zoom has encroached into that, but I think it can be a really good and useful tool. So the way in which I was then thinking about this further in terms of my evolution of how I was going to talk about digital marketing today was, okay, well, what do I do in terms of digital marketing on a daily basis to help my constituent students, my prospective students, understand more about the admissions process at the University of Rochester? And what I quickly realized was, whoa, the U of R, we have a huge trove of videos online through YouTube that addresses a whole range of different topics that has to do with the admissions process, what is life like as a student in the United States. We have a virtual tour of downtown Rochester. You know, all of these really different kind of out of the box, horrible word, but can't think of another way to describe it, approaches to integrated marketing through video, right? And this is not groundbreaking, right? We're not talking about reinventing the wheel here when it comes to using digital tools in terms of the way in which we work with our students. In a lot of ways, use what is right in front of you in terms of the resources that you have in your office, students, faculty, staff, and create a video. So that's Salt Bay. He's great. If you want to buy like a $1,000 steak. But work the workshop. You can see here some of the ideas, some of the topics that we have covered in some of the videos that our office has produced. And this is not like, when I say video production, I think that sends up a lot of red flags around different offices because they're like, oh, then we have to bring in communications, we have to get students, we have to, worry about 10 different offices coming together to produce something. It doesn't have to be that complicated. You need a camera, you need someone to talk, and that's it, right? Put it on YouTube. Put it out to your folks, your constituent students. It can be really that easy. These are just some simple things to keep in mind when creating video content. But, video is important because it's easily accessible, it's engaging, it's versatile, it's easily shared. It's really the most digestible form of marketing content. Those words really make me sound like an expert, but again, I am not. So, it's a very approachable way that we can stay in touch with our students. And so, the digital landscape is here. It's here to stay. Zoomification is here. It's here to stay. So let's use the resources that we have at hand. And this is one way in which we've done that at the University of Rochester. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Subhashri, and I'm the Associate Director at IE University's India office. So how many of you felt this way pre-COVID? You were really good with your engagement, and you were meant to do this. Show of hands. Not a lot of you, but COVID changed that perspective. It truly was not a match made in heaven because most of us struggled to shift online, including me. As an alumni who did the Masters in Corporate Marketing Communications at IE, it took me some time to figure this out because we shut even before rest of India did because of our China office. So it was easy to transition online, but when it came to outreach, it was pretty difficult, and thanks to KIC, we moved pretty early with the web affairs. So clearly, pre-COVID, we were all kings of partnerships and engagement activities, but COVID changed all of that, and we acknowledged that we needed help. And partnerships were essential, but there are tons of partners around the world, but one common problem was budget. So signing up for all of them demanded deeper pockets with bigger budget, and this was pretty true. So what can we do about this? I was pretty fortunate, I am pretty fortunate to work at a university that allows me to use the approach to eliminate. So here are some tips that I use. Use the what's in it for me approach. Every time someone approaches you, ask them, how can I benefit from this partnership? How does signing up with the platform help you with the KPIs, essentially in the outreach side? Does the platform work well in the region you're recruiting? So there are some platforms that, I think at IE we're signed up with most of the platforms, but there are some that work pretty well in India and then some don't. So you should probably try using limited licenses instead of getting the corporate ones. Do they give you any other perks when you're signing up as partners? Are you doing social media stuff? Do they give you digital meet and greets? Are they giving you extra webinars? So since COVID, we've really put ourselves out there, and it's really not, sometimes we're like, it's really not reaching the masses. What are we doing wrong? And in your head, you're saying, my content is going digital, but are you tagging the right audience? Do you have sections on your website? For example, if there's content on safety addressed to parents, is the meta tag activated on your websites and platforms? Is there a parent section? Is your content on the right platform? You gotta ask that yourself. Memes on LinkedIn does not work, right? So every platform has appropriate content. Again, you need to ask yourself, is the website optimized? And one activity that we could all do here is take out your cell phones, type the name of your university, and if it does not appear on the first 3 searches of Google search, your digital marketing team probably needs a training session. So what is the brand's tone of voice? Again, that is super important to ask. Us, we, I, me. Do you have the content translated for regions? If you think your students are coming from China, are you on WeChat? In Japan, are you using Japanese? Because these are, again, regions where English is not most widely spoken, and your website may be optimized only in English. Finally, is there a plan in place? Because sometimes you're doing activities all the way through without any plan in place. So tools like Notion and Figma can help teams strategize and brainstorm collectively. Finally, to talk a little bit about content and social media marketing, find a common theme that connects your university with the content that you're creating. Really talk about what is that your uni truly believes in. There must be your DNA, find that out, and that is the content that you should be making. For example, at IE, entrepreneurship is one of our key values, and that's what we talk about. So the idea is for you to become the thought leader around the aspect. Use the right tone. Again, if you're addressing parents, does the journey in the content sound nurturing? Is there jargon, too much jargon for students? These are questions you need to ask your marketing team and yourselves when you're going through the website. Finally, use mega efforts in the meta world. So universities are now scheduling classes in the VR format. Have you thought about using outreach activities in the VR? So some efforts in the meta will lead to pretty huge rewards. So finishing my presentation with what the great rapper Drake has to say, instead of making new content for every platform, try and repurpose the content. If you have a lot of videos on YouTube, like Brendan said, put that out on Instagram or TikTok, where in India TikTok is banned, but in your regions it's still allowed. So yeah, cut them short and try to be as active as possible. Thank you.
My name is Kate Lotz. I'm the Director of Global Communication for KIC Univassist. And I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of finding your digital voice and what really that means. It all, as Subhashri was just saying, it all kind of ties into tone and branding. And while you're looking at your, powers that be marketing departments in your institutions, those are the ones who are really crafting sort of the core message and the core look and feel of everything. But you would really be doing yourself a favor to try and pair whatever you're doing, officially or unofficially, with whatever they're doing to the extent possible. I actually borrowed this term from Brendan in a tangential presentation we did on social media at another conference. But he talked a lot about official versus unofficial channels and sort of the marketing, department approved versus what you're authentically trying to share about your university from a realistic standpoint. And there are definite pros and cons of each of those, right? And there are places and times for each of those. Some of the things that, and whether you're talking about email or you're talking about social media or anything else, you really should be changing the content based on what the audience, who the audience is and what the audience is looking for. And it doesn't have to be, complete tear down, start over again. You can kind of tweak things, but it really will make it worth your time to make that effort to do that. Some examples would be, if you're sharing things on Facebook, who's really looking at your institution on Facebook? It's probably not students. It's probably their parents. So realistically. That's something that you should be thinking about. Are you talking about things like safety? Are you talking about things like tuition? Maybe those are more important things to talk about on Facebook as opposed to maybe your TikTok or your Instagram. That's probably where the students are looking, so maybe it would make sense to do more, campus life type of things on those channels. And I have an example here of just something that we do in our marketing. There's a Facebook post, which we use that more primarily to connect with high school counselors because that's where more high school counselors are. And you can see the screenshot example. What they're looking for is the information. They're looking for what list of universities are going to be there. I want the details of this. I want all of that information. Whereas if we give that to the student audience, that's not something they're going to find particularly captivating. They're going to much more be likely to really attach to a video, an authentic video of a student. So that's just an example of kind of think about who your audience is and really what they're looking for. And also, thinking about what actually does well where. So maybe this is just sort of, broad strokes, but human interest stories tend to do better on Facebook. Real-time, breaking news kind of things do well on Twitter as opposed to any other platform. Sort of day in the life, Instagram takeover type of things are more effective on Instagram. And that's an example of the student one that I shared there. So think about sort of what are the forms and what is the content and who is the audience that you're talking to. And then also, when you're talking about social media specifically, of course you have to assess it and you have to find out what's working and what's not working, but it's really more than how many likes did it get or how many page views did it get. Every platform has specific tracking metrics that are different, and there are other things that you should be looking into. You should be looking into, for example, the comments. What are the comments? Are people asking questions? You should be looking at the stories, on Instagram and on Facebook as opposed to just the regular posts. Another thing on Instagram you can look at is post saves, because if someone saves your post, that means that they found it really valuable and they're going to go back to it later. Look at tweet replies. So these are all things that are sort of beyond the how many likes did it get, which your marketing department is going to want to know. There are a lot of other things you should consider. And then for those of you, I know that not a lot of you say that you're directly involved in the content creation, but again, I hope that through some of these examples you can see that you might actually be a lot more directly connected than you thought you were, even if it's your out-of-office email, right? Because we all have that. So think about some of the sort of hints and hacks that you can go back to. to increase the accessibility for your audience and whoever's trying to reach you. Because frankly, we all have very short attention spans. If you're still listening to me right now, like, that's impressive. I really appreciate that. Because and I think it's gotten worse over the last couple of years. I think we can all agree to that. But, and for students, it's maybe even worse. So we're all combating that short attention span issue, having concise, accessible messaging, and one clear CTA. So instead of listing, here's a link to housing, here's a link to financial aid, here's a link to, apply, here's a link to the campus tour. Like, maybe think about trying to have a short message that has one specific function for each message. Because people really don't want to search for information. They don't want to go to your website and have to sort of blunder around and try and find what they're looking for. They're really looking for you to spoon feed them one thing at a time for them to really easily access. And offer something tangible to your audience. And, again, whether this is email, like Bridget was saying, give them something. You have to give them something instead of just saying, oh, I'm not available, or oh, I'm available. Here's what I think you want, but maybe it's really not what you want. And I think that one thing that really, this is where we all get a little bit hung up by the marketing departments, is there's no personality, right? Students especially don't want to interact with an institution. That's not interesting to them. That's not going to keep their attention. They want to interact with a person. They want to know who you are. They want to see your face. So even something like adding your picture to the bottom of your email, it's kind of dorky, but it does make a difference. It helps them to connect with you a little bit better. Another thing that we've found really effective is to involve current students. So like on the Instagram takeovers, and it doesn't have to be anything necessarily that's officially approved. Maybe it's like a student worker in your office, and you might have a hard time getting this done on maybe your official institution Instagram channel, but maybe you have an admissions one that you have a little bit more flexibility in using. Involve current students, stick to a consistent look and brand, and I know that can be a little bit hard, especially for some of us that might not be as adept to, maybe creating graphics or, things like that, but there are a ton of free tools. I've listed a few of them here that help you with graphics and pictures, and free resource blogs especially for social media, if you're kind of doing it for the first time. And another really important thing is mobile friendliness, and this is whether it's email, whether it's social media, whether it's a video, anything. If you're talking to students specifically, it needs to be mobile friendly. We wanted to save the majority of this time to have kind of a panel discussion, so we can talk about really the effectiveness of digital marketing. And I think since the camera's only pointed here, maybe you guys can get up and whenever you'd like to answer your question. So we're just going to go through a few of these, and we definitely want to save time for a lot of questions at the end. But the first thing we wanted to talk about is email, the effectiveness of maybe personal emails versus email marketing campaigns.
So like I mentioned earlier, Harvest Campaign is a great way to initiate contact with your students to kind of have that first step forward. But obviously, I'm going to get a lot more responses to emails when I directly send a unique message to all of my students. Like right now, I'm on a tour, and I'm sending a generalized email to all my students, but if I wanted to have a lot higher of an interaction, I could throw in a lot more individualized emails and saying, hey, I'm really glad that you're interested in our psychology program, those kinds of things as well, and really create those personalized emails for those students too. But like Kate said, if you're doing a lot more of those marketing-based emails, one call to action is always important to include as well.
Alright, so something that I do while I'm traveling is I send out marketing emails under my signature with a call to action to book a call with me right when I'm back in office. So that has also created additional leads, because these guys also tell their friends, hey, this person is available to take your calls. So that's something that you could do. Play around tools like HubSpot or Calendly, because these two tools allow you to put in the exact dates and also integrate into your marketing campaigns.
Everybody loves email. Here's a question for the folks in the audience. So I will often use mail merge. As high school counselors, can you tell when you get a message that is through like a mail merge? Is that like, Yes. Okay. So that's a bad thing to do then, because you don't want to know. See, like that, you're kind of breaking through like that. What is it? The fourth or the fifth wall right there, right? And so you want your messaging to come off more authentic. And so I'm really happy to be a part of this panel because I'm getting a lot of different ideas how I can better approach digital marketing, especially through email, because I feel like sometimes that's the only choice we have. But hopefully through this conversation, you'll see that there are other choices out there. Maybe since I'm up here, I can talk just briefly. Yeah. Any thoughts about email? We all love email. Why does it feel like email is I mean, it's not the only option, but it does feel like it's the only option sometimes.
I think everybody is expected to respond to it as opposed
True.
to social media.
The funny thing about that is no one responds to email, especially students.
But the thing is, they do, if when they want information,
Sure.
they know that it's there. They can always get back to you. And yes, I totally agree. The mass emails, they just get deleted because even during pandemic time and even prior to pandemic, um, this email and marketing emails, they just fill up our inboxes, right? So half of the time, not half of the time, 90% time, I think it's all like delete, 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 right? But yes, personal emails, at least they know you've addressed the name or you've talked about the course or you've sent them a link or whatever, in whatever scenario, it does help. They will get back. They won't answer. They won't even write a thank you. You've sent us an email. You've made all the effort after the event, spent 2 hours late night and sent 200 emails probably. But you don't get a thank you, but they will reach out to you because they know it is in their inbox and they know it came from a specific person from the university, institution, whatever it may be.
Great point.
I'm working on this with my students to send apologies. You know, if they missed a call, if they've not attended to an email. So I'm working on this on the behalf of high school counselors here.
The WhatsApp and SMSs are also good way, but the thing is, it's taken very casually. I'm like, okay, yes, we got it from there, but email is a little more official, I feel.
We've actually seen a marked difference. I'm a high school counselor, so we've seen a marked difference in engagement with WhatsApp versus email lately. And now there are scripts out there that you could use, and WhatsApp, you wouldn't find out it's a broadcast message. There are ways to go around it. So, and so those do generally work. And in terms of emails also, Gmail's promotion tabs is the marketing email eater. It eats mails for breakfast. And most people don't even open it up during the day. So with Gmail, especially if you have an education account, a Google education account, it allows you up to 1,200 unique emails to be sent every day. That's the limit. So if you were to utilize using a Google Sheet script again, that would not go into the marketing and maybe mail merge wouldn't be figured out by then. That's how we've used it generally with our marketing.
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
One way to go around not being on the promotional tab is try to use less than 3 hyperlinks in your email, because if you do that, then you either go in promotion or spam. So there's a tip for you.
Yeah, so one of the next things was virtual events, and I think that that's probably, if I had to guess, second to email in terms of the thing that everybody in this room has probably had to do in the last couple of years. Yes, nodding. So just, wanted to talk about some of the things you find effective, not effective, and just, to dive right into like a detail. In our virtual events, we've really noticed students want to see, like I was talking about earlier, students want to see a person. They want to see your face. Even if it's 3 in the morning for you, they really don't care. They want to see your face and they want to hear your voice. And if you use video and audio in your virtual events, it makes a huge difference for students because they can actually hear you and see you. They don't want to come on camera 99% of the time. Even if you invite them and you have the kid, oh, you want to have a video conversation? No, decline. That doesn't mean that they're not interested. It means they want to see you, you know. So that's one thing I would really recommend, even though, again, it's a pain in your butt maybe to do that, but it makes a huge difference for students.
No, I mean, when did we all pay most attention this morning during the opening plenary? Is that how you say that word? It's when a video came on, right? So having that audio visual dimension to a virtual live event even is very helpful. When we do our online virtual information sessions through Zoom, we'll have like our regular kind of view of our promo video on there, and it's like really easy. Most of the time it comes off without a hitch. So that's something that I would suggest. You know, being narrow in your focus sometimes can be very helpful in attracting students to a specific session as well. Also having low expectations. I mean, I think, okay, I should, having low expectations in terms of like the numbers of students that you're gonna come to a session. Like, if I have one student that comes to a session about XYZ topic as it relates to higher education, that's still a chance to communicate with that one student. So, I mean, that's not a waste of time in my opinion. So.
I'm going to mention this from the smaller universities' perspective. We did have to transition and adjust a lot of the virtual events that we held. We were holding so many different, very specific ones, like here's an introduction to our computer science program, here's an introduction to our psychology program. Those turnouts, we didn't get any students for. So I had to say, okay, even though I'm trying and I'm extending everything and doing the best I can, where we really succeeded was providing the tools to students. So if you're finding out that you're not getting any specific attendees to program virtual options, try to be the tool from the US perspective, from the UK perspective. Here's what our application process is like basically in the US and the UK. Here's the US visa information process. We have so many students attend that event, which we normally hold in March, right around that visa application timeline as well. So if you find out something's not working, it's okay to cry in the corner for a second maybe, and then reflect on that and build on and say, okay, how can I do this better?
Perfect, thank you. Social media. Anybody want to talk about social media? Official versus unofficial channels?
I have a kind of an interesting example when it comes to official versus unofficial social media integration and the pushback that you can get from your comms team, because I mean, we all know that ultimately like an authentic voice is a student voice when talking about a particular university. And I worked at a previous institution, and there was a student who was involved in YouTube and had like 500,000 followers on YouTube, and the core of her content was talking about her student life as it related to this institution. And the institution that I worked at was very hesitant about utilizing or sharing or distributing those means of communicating about this particular school. And so it was really interesting and evident to me that depending on your institution, your university, and the policies that you have surrounding the control of a message, how that can really dictate whether or not your institution is going to be incorporating, distancing itself from unofficial quote-unquote social media, when in a lot of ways that's going to be the most popular content. So I think it's a conversation worth having with your institutions to see whether or not you have a policy around the way in which you may want to or not want to incorporate that type of social media.
How many of you here post a lot of pictures on Instagram or Facebook when you're traveling, meeting students, organizing yield events? Show of hands. How many of you use your personal accounts? All right. One way to break from that practice is use probably just a title that says name _ XYZ University, Or what you could also do is whichever region you're traveling to, you could start a page for that region. For example, at my university, we have a official Instagram or YouTube page just for Asia Pacific. We understand that doing something exclusively for India or South Asia may be humongous efforts, but collectively 5 Asian offices together come and do that. So that is one thing that you could do to break out of that unofficialness from your personal profiles.
Any of you do digital advertising? That's a physical form of advertising. So really what I was trying to get at is sort of like the blanket content versus versus the tailored content. No? I think it is. It is. Yeah. Yeah, blanket versus tailored content. So I guess you could apply this to other things as well, but it's sort of the, do you create one marketing campaign for every region, or how do you tailor the digital marketing? What's the difference?
Who uses Slate? Universities? So with Slate, when I was building my Harvest campaign, it was kind of like, okay, we're going to create unique opportunities for students to hear about the specific program that they're interested in. So you can set filters for certain emails that you send in those basic mass options as well, but that's kind of targeting your audience a little bit more specifically in that way.
So I think this question can be more targeted towards outreach. How many universities here have more more marketing budget than outreach budget? Show of hands. I think it's just us. Yes. So one thing you could do is wherever you want to get more students from, try and use stories from those current students or success alumni stories and put it out on your digital media channels with push ads. So that is a great way to tailor your content as opposed to just promoting general university content.
It is working. You just have to put it. I'm going to have Bridget start out with the answer to this question because you touched on it in your presentation, but how do you stand out? And one thing that we constantly hear from high school counselors is every university looks the same. All the emails look the same. All the websites look the same. So how do you really, in a digital landscape, stand out and show that you're different in some way? Get them to remember you for one thing.
For one thing, oh my goodness. I think it involves, there's a whole process to figuring out the onlys of your university. I think if you're going to do that right, it's a lot of sitting down, chatting with your students, figuring out why did you decide to attend this university? Why do we stick out to you? Students from different regions too. Like your onlys of your university for India might be different than the onlys of your university for Southeast Asia or Brazil or different areas in the US, because parent involvement in decisions is going to play a different role as well, depending on the culture of the country and things like that too. But for us, what we've done is just having those casual student conversations, asking them why was this university a great fit for you? What do you think the students really need to know? What would you say to your friends to convince them to apply to this university? That's kind of how we figured out ours.
Well, at Rochester, I'll usually jump on a unicycle, and I'll have, anyway, that's a bad joke. How to stand out? I mean, I think this is the $1 million question, right? Is how do you stand out? And so, what I do in my conversations with students is try to be provide that as personal a touch as possible in the way that we are handling that customer service, right? And again, this is not like rocket science. This is how, you should be operating in a landscape in an industry where personal connection is so important. And so even when it's across something like Zoom, can you incorporate a connection to an alumni or faculty member? Again, that call to action that will give that student at the end of your conversation just a little bit more of a nugget to kind of
similar to Brendan's. The most important is the personal connection. For example, how is your introductory email? At IE, we use videos. There is this great tool called VidHub, which you can integrate on your emails, and it is a 30-second introduction about you, the university, and what you have to offer. If it is an admissions-based question, I send them a checklist so that they have everything in their email and they don't have to look back and forth anywhere. For counselors, first thing I ask is about their health and well-being, because it also depends on the time of the year. Around August, September, up till December, they're generally going through a rough phase. So you first ask them, "Are you doing okay? Can I intrude in your inbox?" So yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah.
Great. Final question. I wanted to have the panel talk about outcomes a little bit, in the sense of what are the reasonable expectations that you can have to improve your access and your reach through digital marketing. Reasonable. Your reasonable expectations.
Well, and I kind of touched upon this already. I mean, I think a reasonable expectation is connecting with one student. I mean, that's my perspective. You know, others may have different expectations in a more formal way, but I think, especially in the landscape in which we operate today, the way in which there are so many means of communication, it's so diversified, that I think success is connecting with that one student. And I know that's kind of like a soft, squishy answer, but that's how I feel anyway.
Yeah, for us, it's, again, the personalized connection. I know we keep saying it, but I think, again, connecting with one student and engaging with them and providing that personalized support to them is huge in their decision process, too. If you introduce yourself and you have that welcoming atmosphere, they're going to feel a lot more welcome at your university and be more encouraged to learn more.
Okay, both of you, that's nice, but how do you respond to enrollment and application numbers with, try again.
I've really seen success during COVID. So most of us were complaining about not being able to reach the targets because of going digital, but it was the reverse case for me. I was able to reach a lot more students and counselors and schools because of going digital. And one thing that we did really differently through digital was actually engaging deans and directors of programs with highly motivated candidates and applicants. So they really got a sense of what the university had to offer, and that's how we were able to manage.
No, and thank you for that thinking time. So one of the ways that I often will justify the involvement still in something like Webby fairs or other virtual college fairs, even as we're phasing out of pandemic times, if we think about leads and the way in which leads are generated, right, in terms of the basis of our applicant pool. Okay, so the College Board, the fewer students, maybe not so much in the international marketplace, but certainly it's going to be happening. The SAT is becoming less and less important in college admissions, and fewer students are going to be taking the SAT, right? So how is College Board going to satisfy the demand that we have for universities with digital leads if they don't have the contacts because students aren't taking the SAT anymore, right? And so one of the things that I will often justify our inclusion in virtual college fairs is the leads that we get, because oftentimes those leads are going to be coming from students that we wouldn't ultimately have a connection through something like the traditional SAT. So that's something that I'll tell the folks about me.
That was all we had. We would love to open it up for questions or comments or advice for your colleagues on anything we talked about. 5 minutes for questions.
So you did some sessions with the professors, right? So how did you manage the data? Like, did you take leads for a long
we're a European university. GDPR is not easy for us. So we have our internal registration process. You could collect leads either through websites like Eventbrite or, let's say, Zoom registrations if your legal department permits you to do that. So that's how we do it. But another really useful link is, or tool is Integrate Events, through which you can create events and send it to probably counselors and have them get the data, and then you can use that.
I just wanted to add, so I have been a university and it's been only 4 months for me that I'm a high school counselor now. I was with Waterloo and Alberta. This can be a little controversial and very personal, but I think what really worked for me at Alberta and Waterloo was personalization, and I didn't really believe in very formal communication. And I think this could be a little culturally inclined an answer as well. If there's a parent in India needing me at like 9 p.m. and I pick up my WhatsApp video call and I'm like, he can see me and like they can talk to me, that serves my purpose. They're friends with me 7 years down the line, right? So that can be used as well, especially for India representatives. Like, yesterday I was in a situation, I'm not obviously gonna name the university, and I called the delegate, Indian representative at 6:30, and he mentioned to me, Parul, my work timings are 10 to 6. I'm sorry, I'll not be able to entertain this. And we were waiting for the visa. So, like, I think that is something we need to get rid of. Especially in our culture, that doesn't work this way, I feel. So this worked really well for me if any one of you wants to adopt this. Thank you.
Hi, this was like an excellent session. I think we all have a lot of takeaways. I don't have a question basically. I just have few pointers to add since we are talking about good practices. I work for York University. My name is Megha Srivastav. One of the things that have really helped us engage better with our international students is that every week we have a virtual drop-in session. That's something that our international department organizes. And like you mentioned, it doesn't depend on the size of the group. So even if we have 3 students coming in, they'll all come from different destinations. And I personally have gone in and attended those sessions. I kind of really like it because these are very personalized. That's one. Second was, Subhashri mentioned meetings with the faculty. So at York, there's a designated recruitment officer for every faculty. And prior to when we opened the India office, we were not engaging very closely with the faculties. That's another thing that we've started doing, because as a recruiter, sometimes it's very difficult for me to answer questions related to a particular program. Like York has more than 200 academic programs. It's just impossible. I get confused what's there on the list. So that's another thing that's kind of really helped. And the faculties are open in terms of setting up appointments. Of course, like Subhashi said, interested students who write back, because the students who are interested in your institution will definitely get in touch with you through the email, through the phone, like just what ma'am mentioned earlier on. Another thing that I try and do is I try to book some time in my calendar every week for whether these are telephone calls, like Parul said, you have to get personalized. You just I have colleagues from, other Canadian universities also present here in the room. I can tell you confidently that, we don't have that 6:30 tab. Parul, you can call me at 10 if you want to, if I'm, yeah. So, that kind of really helps, especially with, when you're dealing with students from South Asia. It means a lot to a parent, because they are heavily invested, in the decision making, that you attend to the call and you just talk to them. So that's another thing that's kind of really, really helped. Yeah, so these were the kind of points that I wanted to make. One of the challenges that I face, I don't know whether my other colleagues are also facing, is with the video content. So, the presentation is excellent, the ideas are really great. But at most of the Canadian universities, we have a different marketing communication department. We cannot create, even we do, we will have to send it, and by the time it kind of gets vetted by that department, we've already missed the bus. So that's one challenge that I personally face. You might have excellent ideas, you want to create video content, but that's where, I feel stuck, that I don't have that kind of flexibility that, you can go on and add do a video maybe on the application process. So many times we're getting emails, explain the application process. It's so easy to kind of like just do a video and tell them, okay, you know, there are 2 ways of applying, this is what you can do. So just wanted to add those comments to the conversation. Thank you.
Lady said, even if you ask what's the benefit in that partnership, budget doesn't get altered. Huh? They never reduce the fees, they never reduce the charges, and nothing happens. It's just a decision which you make whether you want it. But budget gets